Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Hello and welcome once again to the show we call All Things Writing. I am Brian the Writer. I appreciate you coming and spending time with me today. You are super important to the show, and I really appreciate it. So I want to remind you, if you're watching and you have not done so, hit that subscribe button. Hitting that subscribe button is such an important thing. It helps the algorithm out there to know that we are being watched, and it just good things happen. I can't quite explain it because I don't do the algorithms, but I just like saying algorithm. So algorithm. We've reached the end of 2023. We've begun 2024. It's kind of amazing, to be honest. It snuck up on me. Snuck up on me completely and totally. Did not finish out the month of January the way I wanted to. I'm a little late in getting videos out. Part of the reason was, well, we've had two big snow events here in Northern Virginia. We had a couple of my guests. We needed to rejigger the time that they were going to be on. A couple had to be pushed off to other months. It just happens. Sometimes people get sick and things get in the way. 2023 has been a great year. Was a great year in terms of the podcasting and the show and things like that. You'll remember that we started out the year doing podcasts on a true podcast platform. We were on Buzzsprout, and then we shifted over to YouTube. Did that because it just makes my life so much easier. Editing podcasts it was a lot of work. And, we had a couple different show sponsors on, which was good. I always like having show sponsors on. That makes things for fun. I will say, the work doesn't slow down. I'm working on a couple of different novels all at once, and short stories and other things. All good stuff. All good stuff. By the way, when we've got these bazillion things to do, I feel like I work two full-time jobs, and it really does wear me out. So I did find a wonderful thing to help me through. This is Magic Mind. Now you've heard me talk about this already if you've been watching the show. Highly recommend at least trying it. It really does make a difference. It has some wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff in it. It has, and I wrote the names down because I know I'm going to screw. Well, let me back up a second. So earlier this year, I decided to ditch sodas completely and totally, switch to water. Water and black coffee. Got me to thinking a little bit about how I could change the way I'm doing things, and maybe an additive. Well, this is kind of good. This is a superfood, okay? The stuff that's in here is all very, very good for you. I wrote it down. Where the heck is that? There are things I had never heard before. Nootropics and adaptogens. Adaptogens, that's a hard word to say. But these are things that we found out, that science has found out is very, very good for your body. Some of which helps decrease inflammation, which we know inflammation can be linked to a lot of things. It can be linked to joint pain. It can be linked to getting tired in the afternoon, which is what I was doing. So this little shot helps carry me through the end of the day. It's got a little bit of caffeine in it, but it also has all these other really good ingredients in it, which helps carry you through. My brain gets a little bit foggy. Things get a little bit difficult to do. Not if I take this. Take this little miracle pill here. It's like a pill. I call it a pill. It kind of looks like a long one. It's not. It's a liquid. It smells very good. The taste is very much like green tea. You don't taste like a medical type flavor. No, this is actually very good. I truly stand by this product in terms of adding it to your lifestyle. I think it really will help you. It certainly has helped me. So consider going out and hitting up Magic Mind. By the way, I'm going to give you I'll give you a code here. You can go and you can get some percentage off your order. By the way, I'm going to give you another code. Poof. See, it's like magic. Poof, right? And that code. So the code on the bottom will expire at the end of January. I know we're almost at the end of January. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, things went a little sideways on me. But then this other code never expires. You can use that code going forward, however, to order your Magic Mind and get it shipped to you. So that's 20. This one here is 20% off. It's a good deal, really. Magic Mind. Consider checking it out. At least go to their website, look up the ingredients, and you'll see what I mean. It's got a lot of really good things in it. Lion's mane mushroom, for example. These are all things that we know are healthy and really, really do work quite well to help carry us through the day. So, Magic Mind, I'm all for it. One of the things I love is repeat guests. Repeat guests are my favorite thing in the world. I don't necessarily go out and hunt them, but sometimes I do. This one had this next guest had another book coming out and said, "Hey, Brian, can I come on the show and talk about it?" Those of you who have been following me for a long time know that I am a huge fan of the first book in the series. I will tell you the name of it. It's Winslow Hoffner's Amazing. I think it's Winslow Hoffner's Amazing Tales. I think that's the first book. I might be getting that wrong, but this is the second book in the series right here. Winslow Hoffner's High Sailing Adventures. Very much enjoyed this book, and highly, highly recommending it. I read the first book, and I fell in love with the way Michael tells his stories. His storytelling is absolutely amazing. You feel like you're sitting there at the feet of the captain listening to him. But anyway, I'm going to go on and on about it, but I'm not going to go on and on about it because you know what? In a second here, I'm going to snap my fingers and we're going to have Michael Thompson on, and he can tell you about the books. We'll have a chat, and I swear you'll love it. Okay. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Without further ado, like I said, I am lucky enough to have Michael Thompson on to talk about, I remember now, Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters is the first book in the series. He also has another book called The Orb, which also I highly recommend. So anyway, that's enough to do. Now we got that all straight. Finally, I'm lucky enough to have him back on the show to talk about this book. Please give a warm, all things writing welcome to my good friend, Michael Thompson. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey.
That's
Thank you for having me.
That's my studio audience, which I keep with me at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those of you, so people who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Michael Thompson. I'm an independent author and illustrator from Northern Virginia, and I'm the author of a few things, including the Winslow Hoffner series. It's a folkloric fantasy series on the high seas about cryptids, sea monsters, epic urban legends that few have beheld, but there's one man who happens to have seen them all, the gallant fisherman, Winslow Hoffner. And he's regaling his tales of adventure to a couple of journalists who discover that their small harbor town may not be what it seems.
And so you told us a little bit about the book itself, the world itself. I very much enjoyed both books. I enjoyed the first book. I enjoyed the second one. I would actually show off the first book, but my wife is reading it in the other room. So
hey, that's a good testament. Yes. I've got one right here.
Yes,
I have one already prepared. This is the first book, Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. This is our introduction into Winslow's world of cryptids and seafaring adventure. And I just released the second book, Winslow Hoffner's High Sailing Adventures. And this one dives a little bit into Winslow's past and how his adventures with the cryptids began. And in terms of the themes and the cryptids and myths that we explore, it gets a little bit more Celtic. So
And I feel like, and I hate to give too much away of the series. So the first book is this. It's I think Winslow's way of telling these tales and the way the tales sort of roll out. There's a very whimsical feel to them. At some point, you feel like you're actually sitting there in front of Winslow and getting kind of the tale from him. Was he drawn off of anyone in your life, or where did the idea of Winslow really come from?
Yeah, Winslow came about in an interesting way. A lot of my books, when I write them or when I start writing any of them, it usually starts with some type of either a foundational image or a foundational line. And in the case of Winslow, there was a line of dialogue, which turned out to be the first line of the first book, which was, "Have you ever stared straight into the eyes of death and scoffed?" And that popped into my head, spoken in that way, with that accent and that dialect. And I was like, "Ooh!" And this was back in high school, and I typed it into a document quickly, and I put it away because I didn't know what it was, didn't know who was saying it. And then eventually, in high school, I was assigned to write a short story as one of the projects for a writing class. And I thought, okay, all right, let's take a look at some of my notes here, and that popped back up, and I was like, okay, who is saying this? Who is this guy? And it all sort of came from there. I kind of got the sense that he was a seafarer from the way that he spoke and the accent, and then who are the eyes of death as well. And so Winslow and the first monster Gambo kind of came through at the same time. And I knew it couldn't be just a regular fish or even a shark. That's not spooky enough. That doesn't warrant such intensity. And so my foundational interest in cryptozoology fed into that. And I remembered the tale of Gambo, which was this is an obscure legend about an unidentified creature that washed ashore in 1983 in the Gambia. And they didn't know what it was. It could have been the last of the mosasaurs or a prehistoric dolphin of some kind. But before anyone had a chance to scientifically document it, it was chopped up and buried in the sand, and the head was sold to a tourist, and no one ever saw it again. And so I thought, this is great. I can do whatever I want with this thing. And so one of the other things that I like to do as a writer, especially for my fantasy stories, is create something so unbelievable and then do my best to make it believable. Because if I can hook the reader on that level with the trying to sell the most unbelievable concept possible, then you will have credibility moving forward throughout the rest of the story. And for Winslow, that credibility is extremely important because his stories are on their face so completely unbelievable. And as I was writing it, that sort of concept of the fisherman tale, which traditionally is a tall tale and one that is like, it was this big.
The fish tale.
You never seen anything like
and
it.
it starts this small and it
Yes.
gets bigger every time you tell it. Yep.
Aggrandizement and all that. And so it was an interesting inversion to take that, spin it, and say, no, Winslow is actually very bad at lying. And we see him attempt to lie later on in that book. There's a moment I really like at the end when he's encountered by the villain Scialpi, and he's holding up a picture of him and the article that our main character John wrote about him, and he says, "Oh, look, there you are." And Winslow's like, "That ain't me," So he can't lie, and so that was an interesting thing. So inversion is a big theme of the first book, for sure.
Well,
And so
I
all of
guess
those traditional concepts kind of turn on their head.
well, I guess that it brings up a really good something that I think kind of went through my mind at several points while reading High Sailing Adventures. What is the difference in your mind between book one and book two?
Mm-hmm. There's a few big differences. The structure is a little bit different in the sense that it's told. Now, all of the stories across all of the books are kind of told in a form of flashback. They're framed stories. So when Winslow's telling the tales, it's little pieces of the overall narrative come through in the dialogue while he's telling one of his adventures, and you learn little pieces that all sort of add up at the end. But for the second one, there's a lot of flashbacks, and we see Winslow as a young man, and whereas John is kind of the main character of the first book, where his journey is one of sort of skepticism and mundane real world sort of things, and then drifting into magic and belief during his time spent with Winslow and hearing those stories. Winslow is the main character of the second book, and we see him before all of those wild magical encounters begin, and him after, and how he changes, and the intensity that sort of comes with that. And it's a little bit more intense, and you in your
it is
in your review that you did, you picked up on that exactly. And so any time of great change in a character is going to be fueled by some type of conflict or intensity, and for Winslow it was very intense.
It got, in my mind, it got dark.
Yep.
It did get dark, and we see a part of Winslow that there's you see now that there's two sides of Winslow. There is the root beer swilling, stool sitting, storytelling fisherman, and then there's this past that he tried to get away from to a certain extent, to a life where he was just happy and peaceful, and it catches up with him.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's interesting that John Chaplin's arc continues to a certain extent, but it's not. It's an arc that continues. He's not. He was already convinced. Now he is becoming even more convinced. He's being pulled farther down that rabbit hole. Yeah. That is Winslow's life. And now him and his sidekick on this adventure, Becky, they're both part of the storyline.
Oh yeah.
And Winslow doesn't want them to be part of it at some point. Because he knows what depth it is. So what role does John continue to play in this storyline, and where do you think where do you see him going?
Oh yeah. The effect of it, and because the story is so aquatic, sometimes I think of a lot of the metaphors in an aquatic way, and John and Becky are very much swept up in the current of Winslow's past, and the more that they know, it's kind of like an effect of of their own knowledge kind of like drawing them deeper into danger. But it's kind of one of John needs to become braver, and I think that it's while the first book was kind of about his skepticism morphing into belief, the second book, and then moving into future installments of the series, is about his caution morphing into bravery. Yeah. And I think that Becky has a really good effect on him in that sense, because Becky she's pretty brave, but there's a counterbalance to everything. John is very thoughtful and cautious, and the positive end of that is that, okay, I think everything through before I do it, and I'm certain of everything before I take that risk. The downside of that is that you can like miss your shot at certain things. Becky is brave and has like a morbid curiosity about things. So in a sense, she's kind of like, sprinting ahead of things, but the inverse of that, the danger, is recklessness. And so they balance each other in an interesting way. And they're a cool team.
They are. I found them as their team dynamic sort of, I don't know, it grows across that arc to where they truly do become, I like to say, a good team, especially when your writing is those complementary roles really have to work with each other, and I think they do work extremely well. And they could almost have their own book unto themselves, and how they dig into these adventures and go forward. Winslow has a former employer.
Yes.
Let's
Cryptica.
talk about them a little bit, because that was a turn that I honestly was not expecting in the second book.
Hmm.
When I started reading it, I was not expecting that to be an aspect of Winslow's life. But then again, I guess I just assumed he'd always been a fisherman, just a fisherman.
Right. Well, we see a lot of, and it was parts of it were shown in the first book, his time with the agents,
Mhm.
studying the Beast of Busco with Scialpi, his former partner. But we go even deeper beyond than that. You're right in the sense that he was not always a fisherman. He was not always even doing that. And before all of those things, he was a deckhand on a very cool cargo ship called the Trident, which was actually a sailing cargo ship, which is pretty unique. I had to do some interesting research for that, because I had to make sure that there would have been such a thing realistically, at least one, like in the
Yeah.
time of steam. I had to see, I was like, is there anyone doing cargo stuff from, and the reason that I had to do that was because of a line in that I got locked into a certain style of vessel because of a line from the second chapter of the first book.
Okay.
And it's a blink and you'll miss it moment. Winslow was telling the story of the mermaid in the Trouble with Mermaids chapter, and he said the masthead came swinging off balance in the wind, heading right for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it needs to have a sail now. So it was important that it was a cargo ship for certain things, but it had to have a sail. So I go researching, and there were sailing cargo ships
There were.
up until this point, even into the mid 70s, which gave me plenty of buffer.
Yeah.
But they were like very rare and single digits, and so the nature of it was, I like to imagine that the skipper Clint Horn, that he kind of like won that ship in a gamble, and then like had to make a business out of it. Like he lost everything else, but he got the ship, and so now he has to make a business out of it. So that was kind of my background headcanon for where that particular ship came through. And the effect of it, just in terms of a setting, is so neat when they're sailing up on Conway, Wales, which of course has the most castles of any shoreline, I think, anywhere. And then you have this what essentially looks like a pirate ship. But yeah, Winslow gets wrapped up in some darker activities that he's not totally aware of at the beginning, but he's kind of fueled by different sorts of things to go down a path, even though his instincts tell him that it's wrong. And Winslow also, that's another major theme, is his instinct, his intuitiveness, which that is the connection to the villain in this book, Voss. And so Voss is also like sort of a darker kind of interpretation of that quality of Winslow. So he's his shadow in that sense.
Well, so the best literature, I always say, holds a mirror up to ourselves. And Winslow has that other side to him, which I think is really kind of an important thing to bring about and talk about. A wife. I guess I didn't think. Did you mention the wife in the first book? I don't remember.
Oh yeah. So Anna Maria Luck, that she was mentioned in the second chapter of the first book.
Okay.
I only had eyes for one miss, you see, a girl by the name of Anna Maria Luck, and I dare say I never crossed any creature as remarkable as she. And we also see Winslow's, one of his core character traits is his sentimentality. At the end of the book, where the last four letters of Sienna are broken off of the ship's name during the collision with La Gloria, the motor yacht, he jumps into the freezing water to get that sign, which is a crazy thing to do. But it's it contains the name of his wife. The Sienna is a portmanteau between Winslow's two loves, which are Anna and the sea.
So, See that I'm always balancing between this idea of giving too much away
Mm-hmm.
and then saying exactly what I want to say. So I'm always careful.
Well, maybe we can do a spoiler talk or something like at the end.
Yeah,
I don't
I don't
know.
want to.
Something to think about. There's a lot of spoilers in this book. This
There
is
are a lot of
it's hard to
spoilers.
talk about actually. There's an amazing level of
There's a
what
lot.
can I say?
There's a lot going on.
There's
There's
a
a
lot
lot
going on.
going on
Yeah.
in this book, and
Mm-hmm. It's packed.
but it's done so well. The
Thank you.
editor, their editor, um,
Yes.
is not. He doesn't have a lot of belief in him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nell Dunny, the assistant editor.
They seem to have to. They have to take matters into their own hands.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Was there a? Was this an original? Was this like the idea that you had in mind going into the writing of the book? Did you plan this one out? How did you go about creating this world and executing?
Well, Nell Dunny, he's an interesting character, and his role gets even bigger in the third book. But as much as there's the villains in Winslow's cryptid magical world, there's the villains in the mundane world, or the antagonist, I should say. And there's kind of there's a bit of a competition. Like Nell's the type of character who's like always in competition with someone, even if they're not in competition with him. And he and John are kind of in the running for the approval of Albert Nguyen, their editor in chief, and so we kind of see that a little bit, and so there's definitely a lot of pushback. But to Nell's defense, these stories are unbelievable, and they're just they have that effect on the characters as well. They're very charming, and you can't help but like them. But Nell's like, we put this guy in every single issue, and he's the only source. It doesn't make any sense,
Wow. Yeah.
And there's a great line from him in, I think, the third or fourth chapter, Monsters Are Real, where he says, this guy is a once in a lifetime sighting. What was it? Once in a lifetime experience. What, once a month? How's that even possible? How does that make any sense? Who's to say he isn't making this whole thing up? And it's exactly the sort of response that you would expect from a character like him, and most people,
Yeah.
if they don't know Winslow.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
Let's talk art.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk artwork. You have a talent that I don't have. You actually can draw. I cannot draw. I have been fortunate enough to have graphic arts programs that'll allow me to do things like the cover of the app, which I did myself, and all the
Great book.
Yeah, thank you. All of the Dramatic Dead series, but you do a lot of hand drawing as well, and I know you have a certain passion about it.
I do, yeah.
If we hold them up at the same time, they'll look cool. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Oh, there you go. That's the money.
It's so
shot
nice
right
to
there.
see them next to each other too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm kind of doing different color schemes across the different books, so it's kind of cooler in this one and then hotter in this one.
Yeah.
Kind of springtime tones. Yeah, I do really enjoy drawing. It's kind of a component of my writing process. I like to draw, like, especially whenever there's a fantasy book, and in this case, it's kind of in the paranormal realm. I like to draw the monsters, and you kind of discover, those fine details as you're drawing them. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm detailing them in the written word, then you can paint those pictures with words, and you've had that sort of immersive, deeper dive on them. But yeah, and it's an interesting process taking the legends from cryptozoology and adapting them into my own style of that legend. And so, for instance, we've got a really cool guy in the background right here. This is a Welsh legend called the Afonk, and it's a neat puzzle trying to discover, okay, how could this be biologically possible or feasible? The Afonk in legend was described in a few different ways, and one of them, and I think the most prominent way, is it was probably about bear sized, and it had the head of a crocodile and then the body of a very large beaver. And so then I thought about that in silhouette, and I thought that's a very large monotreme, like a platypus.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went with that. And then later on during my research, I discovered that they had found teeth from a large precursor to the platypus. Now it's not teeth that are as elaborate as what's arming
Sure.
the jaws of Percy in the background, but they were teeth. They had teeth, and I guess they sort of the theory is that they kind of went away and just became the bill purely. But I was like, that's pretty cool, and there's a lot of interesting things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, but I know you're just not doing, you've got other outlets for these drawings as well. I have one here somewhere in my office. How much of your time do you think you balance between drawing and writing the different books?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. I kind of use it as a way to keep my mind fresh.
Hmm.
And so I will alternate between illustration projects and writing projects.
Hmm.
And so currently my illustration project is for, and this will be an exclusive scoop for you, but I am
Oh,
working on the anniversary editions of Chicken Boy. So the first three
cool.
books, I'm redrawing all of them, and they're going to be in a more industry standard size. So we have this is the fourth book here. They're all going to be this size and this quality, and you can see it's nice and clean, and sharp lines and all that stuff. And so I'm gonna redo all that, and those are all hopefully coming out this year.
I'm actually really excited about that because that was one of the my next acquisition of my exclusive Michael Thompson library is going to be the Chicken Boys series. I
Yeah,
want to
it's a
have
perfect time
those
to jump in. They're
available.
so
Yeah.
funny. The latest one was the funniest book I've ever written. I write them in such a way that I'm busting a gut as I'm writing it and as I'm drawing it. And so I think it was C.S. Lewis who said that a children's book that only appeals to children is a bad children's book. And
Yes.
so I always write it in such a way that if the parents are reading along with the kids, it'll be very entertaining to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if the kids grow up and think fondly on it and dig up their old copies and open it up and read it, there will be new jokes on a cerebral level. Like there's one really funny. Let me show you something. I'm gonna not to get too off on a tangent, but this is a very deep joke that, and another Brian the Writer exclusive. I don't think I've talked about this on anyone else's program. Okay, so we have this crane in the background.
Yes.
The Deus Ex Machina Corporation, it says on it, and this is something that they needed, and then there it was. Deus Ex Machina obviously means in writing or storytelling conventions something that comes out of nowhere and helps the hero. So it's funny on that level, but it's funny on a deeper level because the translation of it is like deity from the machine. And the term came from, I believe, plays where at the end of the play a crane would actually lower in a statue of some type of deity to save the main characters from certain destruction. And they're using this to lower one of the characters down to accomplish a certain task, which is a very funny thing if you read it. So it's got all these layers. It's like the deepest layer joke, and it's in the background. But I put stuff like that into those books.
You do have to, if you're writing and you are not experiencing the emotions that you're trying to get through while you're writing, then you're not there. You're not where you need to be. When you write, do you write with music playing, or what kind of music? Or do you have? I have to have like dark horror themed music playing in the background.
that makes a lot of sense and explains a lot.
Yeah.
I write in complete silence.
Oh, okay.
I like to sort of like be in my mind and be immersed and not but I can't seem to, I especially can't write if there's lyrics. I can edit
Yeah.
if it's a lyricless ambiance type
Mhm.
music. So I do edit to that, and I definitely draw with music or listening to podcasts. I can do that because when I'm drawing, I'm just sort of like bringing to fruition a single image that exists in my mind. When I'm writing, I'm sort of like trying to be as mentally there as possible. But if I'm editing or if I'm drawing, I do like to listen to music.
So I listen to the darker music, but I agree, cannot have lyrics.
Yeah.
It has to be just the music. And then I have my music for writing, but jazz when I'm editing,
Oh, cool.
which, people make fun of me and they say jazz is just essentially where you take a bunch of notes, throw them in the bucket, shake them around, and then dump them out. Okay, well, that may be the case, but I still enjoy it.
Do you ever find yourself acting out sequences of action in the real world when you're writing them?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to do something. Viewers, don't get mad at me for this. I'll be right back. At least I think I will. Oh, there we go. Okay, so when you do a lot of horror writing, this is an actual real gun. This is a 38, but it's called a 38-200. It's you cannot buy ammo for this. The ammo doesn't exist anymore. This is beyond antique. It's a precursor
Wow.
to the police special. But it was made for World War II. It even has the spot for the idiot strap
look at
on
that.
it. Yeah. And it has the original handles. It's a beautiful weapon, actually. But yeah, you just can't, but I keep it around in my office because if I'm doing things like, he aims the gun, well, then I have to think through the physicality of all that.
Yeah.
It's the same with like, okay, I've got my fencing foil back there, and I have books on forensics. I have, everything I would need to actually sit down and work through what really something's like. Have you ever done that with Winslow? Because there's a certain amount in here. You've got to do, like, you've got boats, you've got the sea, you've got all these other things you have to take into account.
Yeah, I definitely got up and active when I was writing World of the Orb.
Yes, I
There was
knew that.
a lot of combat in that one, and sort of like, you find yourself, airboxing, whatever the term is, like,
Yeah.
and figuring out, like, the sort of like you said, the physicality of it.
Yeah.
And then Winslow, there's just a lot of research in Winslow and, nautical terms and stuff, and making phone calls to different places. Winslow takes place in Nova Scotia, and I don't live there, and so I did a lot of research where I was calling restaurants about fish and stuff up there. It was an interesting process.
Calling restaurants about fish in Nova Scotia. Now that's a level of dedication. Yeah, and I had also, so I also read, for you listeners, The World of the Orb. Very, very much enjoyed that book as well. And yes, there we go. And definitely one of those books where we're going to see a second one out of Michael at some point.
We will.
I know that's something you're working on. If you're not, you're working on it now, because I just said it. It's got to be real.
Just start typing. Yeah, no, I have started working on it, and it was around the time of the lockdowns that I had to switch up my strategy for which books to focus on. And Winslow is a quick read. It's faster to read and it's faster to write. And so I wanted to create an anchor series, which is a term that I learned and found applicable. And also, it's nautical too, so haha. But I wanted to create an anchor series so that so that I could have one complete series that I can point to and say, and readers can say, oh yeah, that's Michael. That's the guy who wrote Winslow Hoffner.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. The you mentioned something just a moment ago, and I was going to ask about it, and then I lost it. So I don't know. That's gotta.
It'll
Oh
come
well,
back.
whatever. It's it's. Oh, I remember what is. So, what would if somebody came up to your table and said, what grades would you think you're reading in Winslow?
That is an interesting question. Because I aimed at adults when I was writing it, but it's fairly clean,
Yeah.
and
No, it's.
there's some intensity, but especially in the second book, but it's fair. It's a pretty clean book and not crazier than anything that you would see on a TV 14 television series.
Yeah.
So I usually say like 13 plus, but I've had readers as young as 9 enjoy Winslow, and I make the caveat that there's some television language in there, and the characters are adults, but beyond that, it's clean, and no one's had a problem with it. And when I do have those young readers, it's a very easy read.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's the aspect of the dialect. There's like phonetic dialect, so all of the characters, their accents are baked into how it's written, so
Mm-hmm.
you can see the dialect right on the page. And so I think for some, especially young readers, that's a a bit of an adjustment. I remember when I was very young and I read Brian Jakes did that in Redwall. It threw me off, and
Mm-hmm.
because you have different spellings for different characters of the same words, and if you're very young, then that's an adjustment. But
Yeah.
um, so I usually say 13 and up, but I've had young readers too.
Yeah, I know that once I started reading it, I think I got through it in like 2 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And
fast.
yeah, I had a couple of it's and it's not fast because I won't I would tell somebody it's not fast because it's short. It's fast because it's one of those books that you do want to take. You're strongly considering calling in sick the next day just because you want to sit around and read. There are those kinds of books that people just want. It's really it makes a great anchor series. I think
Thank
it
you.
really does. Um, so I mean, I would almost say you're okay middle grade on that one.
Yeah, it could
Um,
it could definitely go down to middle
yeah,
grade. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know that I'd have too many problems with that if I had kids that age reading it. What's next for Winslow?
Oh, we are. The second book definitely sets up a lot of things that are integral to a lot of the series moving forward.
Hmm.
And there will be a third book.
Hmm.
And in fact, I can tell you that I'm planning 5 in the
Oh
main
wow.
series, and
So so do
possibly
you
a spinoff too.
do you have them already sort of like the major muscle movements of each book figured out?
Yes, mentally, it's all up
Hmm.
here. And I also have, going back to my process of drawing stuff, I have thick folders of
Okay.
cryptids and
Okay.
legends, and
Okay.
I've got books back in my shelf where I've been researching cool and obscure legends
Okay.
to
Okay.
Winslowify in the future installments.
Yeah, well, as far as the sea goes, there's plenty of different options out there to
Certainly.
to pick from. So it's definitely a good fertile ground to hunt. Good fertile hunting grounds for what you need.
Hmm.
I gotta move this around so that I can hold up the book and recommend it again and say, this is an excellent book. Get the first one, read it. I don't think you necessarily have to read them in order, but I would highly suggest it anyway, just so that you're familiar with the characters.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I feel like the story blossoms. I wrote it in such a way that you could, if you
Yeah,
ended up picking up, you could read it and enjoy it for what it was. But I think that the experience is richer,
yeah.
and there are really cool little details that are sprinkled throughout the first book that makes revelations in the second book bloom in a very satisfying way when you're
I
reading it.
think I think a part of me feels like there's a complexity to the second book that I think the first book was not as complex, but I also want people to understand that complexity, you don't necessarily have to read with that level of complexity. I think some people just read things and they just get through it and like, wow, that's a great ride. Somebody else reads it and turns around and goes, oh, wow, did you catch this? And then this, and then this, and this. And they're like, no, I just thought it was a good book.
Yeah.
But I
I
think,
definitely, yeah, I definitely try to write things. I try to write everything with a lot of depth in it, but I have like surface level enjoyment that you can have. It's like, okay, this is a fun action adventure.
yeah.
This is escapism. And then there's all kinds of different symbolism and stuff that you can really sink your teeth into. Winslow 2, I've been calling my bookiest book because there's a lot of layers to it. And I think one of the main differences,
book.
yeah, that's what I've been calling it, because like some of my books like can play almost cinematically. The first book is extremely linear, and the second book is told, it jumps around at different time points. And so when I was writing it, I was thinking, how do I write this, because things are happening out of order, but it's important that the details are shared out of order in order to have the revelation at the end, revelations hit with the proper intensity. And I took some time and I was pacing around and I was thinking about this problem, and then what came into my mind was a shape, and it was a Trinity knot shape, a Celtic knot. And so, and I was like, and then I felt compelled to put that on a piece of paper, and then I wrote the story beats onto the knot. And then I was like, and then it all clicked for me. Whereas you can visualize a story either like linearly or like a circle. And Winslow 2 is written in a knot. So it sweeps up, it dives in and out of the past. And there's 3 major points of revelation that occur that tell the complete story, which is in the middle of the knot, and by the time you finish the book is at the end of the story. And so that was how I figured it out.
It's almost like you have this Celtic Venn diagram thing going on. And
yeah, exactly, which is appropriate considering it's a Celtic book, and there's things like the Loch Ness monster in it, and the Barcoo.
Well, and when the first time we see Anna and Winslow together in the boat, that completely threw me off for a few beats, and then I went, okay, wait a minute, no, now I understand what's going on. But again, I don't think it wasn't so challenging that it threw me off. It was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this.
Yeah, we start in the past. We start with a young Winslow and his wife.
Yeah,
and then the framed story begins in that rowboat, where Anna's actually telling the story in her best impression of her husband, and then
which was fun.
We dive into
yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah. Well, ladies and germs, I got to tell you, go pick up the book. We'll pick up both books, actually. Go buy both books right now. Hit pause. Go buy both books. Then unpause. Okay, we'll do it. Ready? Okay, great. Thank you. Good job. But yeah, it's on Brian's highly recommended list of things to read. It's a good time. Mike, it's always great having you on.
It's always great talking to you, my friend, and thank you so much for your endorsement and your recommendations and spreading the word, and your amazing review earlier on your YouTube channel.
Well, I try to do reviews whenever I can. And of course I end up reading a lot of books, and this is definitely very high up on my list of recommendations. And
thank you.
Considering that most of my other recommendations are horror novels, that's pretty good. You're sitting in pretty good company.
Very nice. Very nice. And I will say, the first book is now available on Spotify. So Spotify just recently got into the audiobook game, and you can listen to, if you want to, it's a great way to catch up on the first Winslow's first adventure. I narrate it myself, and you can hear all the different accents of the characters, and it's really, really cool. It's a neat experience.
Okay. I would love to be able to do it. So I started working on doing the audiobook narration of one of my books. The problem is time.
Oh
Time
yeah.
to do everything. I am constantly in awe of your ability to do all of these other things because I can't get around to it. It's next to impossible. But yeah, so the first book is an audio. I forget, is the second book on audio too?
Not yet, not yet. My
Okay.
producer's between studios, and I really want to wait for him to see if I can work with him again.
Hmm.
He's one of the two people that the second book is dedicated to. The second book is
Nice.
dedicated to my editor and the producer of the audiobook edition of the first book. And
Excellent.
so I'd like to try to work with him again because I had a really good experience,
Hmm.
and I just love how it came out. And
Yeah.
it's really really cool. It came together in a magical way.
Well, it's a magical book.
Thank you.
So there we go.
I agree. I agree. Winslow's a cool character.
He is a cool character, and there's so many places that this can go, and I'm just super excited to see where it ends up.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to see. I can't wait for more people to read it. I put a lot into the second book. I put
Yeah,
my whole heart and soul in it, and it was written at a time of high stress. I had
yeah,
a lot of things going on, coupled with the situation with the lockdowns and all of my other events being canceled, and so there was a
yeah.
lot of pressure. And it was interesting. The book, by nature, it was a more intense story, as you mentioned earlier, and I being at a point of stress, it was interesting, sort of when you're writing in a time of stress and your characters are going through stress, the experience of watching them grow and watching them triumph can kind of help you through your own situation as the
Hmm.
writer. So it's neat. You're kind of embedding, even though you're not going through the exact same thing, you're embedding your own struggles into the experience of the character going through their struggles.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think so. Writing is, to a certain extent, it's a balm to our own lives.
Yeah,
It can really, really help.
yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, where can everyone find your books?
You can find my books on michaelthompsonbooks.com. If you go to the book section of there, you can see where all of the different books are
And
available.
and by the way, with my magical powers, I'm going to literally put that on the screen
Ooh.
for people to see.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, see,
You can
magic,
check.
magic.
That's cool. Yeah, you can check it out on michaelthompsonbooks.com. And you can also watch the incredible trailer for the second book, which I put together, which features music by the incredibly talented Katerina Shelahova and Furkan Usta. And you can kind of get a cool cinematic sense of the book and its characters that way. Some of the vibes and some of the themes going on there. That's right at the top of the website when you go there. So check that out. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think.
You know cooler people than I do. I'm just saying.
Oh, they're incredible. Both of them are very, very talented, and I've been thrilled that I had the opportunity to work with them.
Yeah.
And on that same front page of the website, you can see where I'm going to be going in person all this year. So first place is the Frogman Festival in March in Loveland, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Encounter Quest in April, and all sorts of other different places. There's going to be a big emphasis on cryptozoology, paranormal events, as well as all kinds of great book signings too.
Are you going to be at Bigfoot this year?
Yes, I will. Will you?
I will. I will be there with
I
my
will see you
friend
there.
Brian Grover. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. We'll be. Well, you told me about that event, and
Mhm.
it was a great event last year, and
Good turnout.
yeah, good
It's
turnout. We
awesome.
did very well. It was a lovely time.
ECBRO Virginia Bigfoot Con. That's
Heck
in
yeah.
June, I believe.
Yeah. It's in June.
Definitely
It's in
check
June.
that out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for Brian the writer. I want to thank my guest, Michael Thompson, for being on with me yet again. And when the next books come out, of course, we will have him on again because I'm going to be first in line. I'm first, probably going to, and I'm going to pick up some Chicken Boy and start reading so that I can review those as well.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, on behalf of All Things Writing, this is Brian the writer, and my guest, Michael Thompson. You all have a great day. We should do this too. Hey, let's do this because we can.
Hey, thank you.
Yes. I guess that's a great way to say signing out. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Ancona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.